morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to take a look at a deck which I didn't see coming, and I am very much willing to believe you didn't see coming. It is Dustox Cryogonal. Maybe you did see this coming, but I'll be perfectly honest with you, ladies and gentlemen. Every so often, I get surprised by a deck list. A deck comes out and I go, you know what, I did not see that coming. And then every so often, very, very rarely, I see a deck list and go, I'm not entirely sure I believe that. But there was a top 16 finish for Dustox Cryogonal at the unofficial Japanese Championships this past weekend. A tournament with over 200 players where top 16 was taken home by Dustox Cryogonal. Which is a frankly ridiculous thing to say, because who actually believes that was a viable deck? Not me, ladies and gentlemen. Not me. Now, the deck does really revolve around Cryogonal. The deck does not play much energy. The energy it does play is water energy. You are attacking with Cryogonal. And Cryogonal, as a card, does 10 damage and item locks your opponent. Now, I showed you yesterday, I want to say. I showed you yesterday that a Vikavolt deck took both first and second place at this tournament. Turned out this was a really good tournament for item lock. Well, Cryogonal basically comes in and does the same thing. Now with a ridiculously low damage output. We'll get to that in a minute. But it's just a single prize Pokemon that for a single energy does 10 damage and item locks. But it is relevant that this is a basic Pokemon. Because essentially what you do here is if you go second, you need an energy, and then to get this in the active, and that's it. You're rolling. You've got everything you need. It is frankly ridiculous and shouldn't work and shouldn't be good, but it is, and it does, and I love it. So we all know why item lock is so good. Your opponent cannot play stuff like Quick Ball to get set up, and they cannot play stuff like Pokegear to find their supporters, and there's a very good chance that if your opponent ends up item locked early enough in the game, you will just win because they can't get set up. Now, having said that, a 10 damage attacker is basically it's like a 34 hit KO against an Eternatus V Max. It's a 21 hit KO against a Vikavolt. So surely we need something more here. And that's where Dustox comes in so beautifully. Dustox has an ability, Hazardous Evolution. When you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may leave your opponent's active Pokemon paralyzed and poisoned, and then you put 3 damage counters instead of 1 on that Pokemon between turns. And this is where the deck starts to come together. Because actually, Cryogonal is awesome. But doing 10 damage is not going to work. That is not going to get you the win. But if your opponent is paralyzed, they are not going to be able to retreat. They're just not. They can't retreat while you are paralyzed. You're not allowed. So you have to try and get something like a switch. So you item lock your opponent. And the 10 damage from Cryogonal is kind of irrelevant in the end. I mean, sure, it's nice to do the extra damage, but what's really going on here is that you are paralyzing your opponent, making them take 3 damage counters between turns for poison, and oh yeah, while you're there, you're also item locking them to take away the little chance they would have of getting around paralysis. And that is how the deck works. There is one more Pokemon we play here. There is a 2-2 line of Florges, and Florges here is purely for the ability. The ability is Wondrous Gift. Once during your turn, you may flip a coin. If heads, put an item card from your discard pile on top of your deck. Oh. What item card do you go for? Scoop Up Net. Like there are others, Devolution Spray Z will work quite nicely here. We'll get to that in a minute. But basically, it is to reuse Dustox. Both Scoop Up Net and Evolution Spray Z will allow you to reuse Dustox, so that's your goal here. You play a bunch of those cards, 4 of each. Then you've got Florges, and right, Florges is on a coin flip. You don't just automatically get that item card back. If you got 2 out, there is a 75% chance. A lot of the time, you'll probably only have 1. But if you've got 8 options for reusing Dustox, and you've got the natural free evolutions anyway, because you can evolve up 3 times before you ever need to start recovering it, and then you're hitting 50% on Florges, that sounds like it will work rather nicely indeed. And that's the entire Pokemon line. You got Cryogonal to block item cards, Dustox to paralyze and treble poison, and then Florges to reuse those cards that let you reuse Dustox over and over again. And if this works properly, if this runs nicely, your entire game will just be your opponent paralyzed and poisoned, and sometimes they will be KO'd by poison going into their turn, and then they'll be able to attack and get a KO on Cryogonal. But then sometimes they'll get KO'd by poison coming into your turn, and then you get to just restart the whole thing again, and there will be times you can take multiple prizes before they even get an attack, and that is going to be pretty harsh. Now in terms of energy, you're just playing 4 water energy. You're just playing a few water energy to attack with Cryogonal. There will be times you whiff water energy, but bearing in mind, if your opponent is paralyzed and poisoned, you should be okay for a turn or two a lot of the time anyway. Now, in terms of your trainer cards here, we got 4 copies of Quick Ball, because you need all your basic Pokemon, and then 4 copies of Great Ball. No, Great Ball will not guarantee you draw into your evolved Pokemon, but you also play Turffield Stadium here, which is a stadium card that will let you get one of your evolved grass Pokemon. Won't get Florges, unfortunately, but you can't win them all. You still should be pretty good with all of those cards searching out your Pokemon. We play 3 copies of Rare Candy here. Hopefully, you'll only really need to Rare Candy into Dustox once, and then essentially what you're doing after that is just manually evolving because you've got parts of the evolution line on the bench. So you've got a Wurmple ready to go and a Cascoon ready to go, and you're just constantly evolving them up. When you play a Scoop Up Net, you bench a Wurmple, evolve the existing Wurmple into a Cascoon, and evolve the existing Cascoon into a Dustox, and then round and round you go. So you should be okay there. We see a copy of Vitality Band here. That lets you do an extra 10 damage. And firstly, it makes up for the pitiful 10 damage that Cryogonal does. Secondly, if you can make them be KO'd by poison coming into your turn, then you basically get a guaranteed KO while they're constantly paralyzed and item locked. And seriously, if they're paralyzed and item locked, the only thing they can do is switch using a supporter, which they're not always going to be able to get. A lot of the time, they're not going to be able to get. So if you can do the extra 10 damage and manipulate it so they get KO'd coming into your turn, that's going to be kind of wonderful. There is a copy of Ordinary Rod here to recover basic energy and Pokemon, which you might need to do. Bearing in mind you can obviously get it back, same thing with Vitality Band, using Florges does really help. And then in terms of supporter cards, we got 2 copies of Cynthia, 2 copies of Marnie. Cynthia is good shuffle draw, Marnie is good shuffle draw, which can also slow down your opponent. It makes them shuffle the hand into their deck, or onto the bottom of their deck, and then get 4 cards while you get 5. It's quite nice. We're not playing Professor's Research here, because with your Stage 2s, your Rare Candy, etc., it's too risky. We do play 3 copies of Cynthia and Caitlin, which gets a supporter card back while drawing 3 cards, which is quite nice. We've got 1 copy of Boss's Orders to drag a Pokemon from the bench into the active, which seems low, but the deck is kind of greedy on a lot of things, so that's how you end up with 4 energy, 3 Rare Candy, 1 Boss's Orders. You got a copy of Birdkeeper, that new supporter card that lets you switch and draw 3 cards. And then 1 copy of Grimsley. And Grimsley here lets you move 3 damage counters from one of your opponent's Pokemon to another of your opponent's Pokemon. Why would you want to do that? Because you're trying to manipulate a KO, as we keep saying, coming into your turn. So you move damage on or off as appropriate to try and make sure that a KO happens coming into your turn, so that you can get multiple KOs before your opponent actually gets an attack. If they get KO'd by either damage or by poison going into their turn, then what's going to happen is they're then going to be able to attack, KO a Cryogonal, you need a new Cryogonal, you need a water energy, they might be able to play boss's orders and KO something. It gets awkward, right? So you want to try as much as you can to make sure that they get KO'd coming into your turn, and Grimsley helps out with that rather beautifully. This is a weird deck, ladies and gentlemen. This is a really hyper weird deck, which I did not expect to see coming. But then when it makes top cut at a 200-person tournament, filled with really good players, it's one you need to sit up and start taking really seriously. This is a ridiculous deck, and I absolutely love it. But I'd like to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would you? Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.